Welcome to your dose of Switch 2 news this week. Starting off this week, I have a PSA. The Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 remake that comes out in a couple of weeks is a code-in-a-box physical release for Switch 2, just like Split Fiction and Civ 7. This is a problem in of itself, but what really bugs me about this is that on the EB Games Australia website, this is not listed anywhere in the title of the item, nor in the description. I even checked the US GameStop website to see if it was an Australia-only issue. It's not. In fact, the GameStop website even lists the dimensions of the actual game case, but won't tell you it's a code-in-a-box release. On the EB Games and GameStop websites, the only place you can see that this is a code-in-a-box release is in a teeny tiny little disclaimer on the bottom of the box that's about 10 times smaller than the game keycard disclaimer. An example of what to do is JB Hi-Fi, an Australian electronics retailer. Full disclosure, I worked at one of these stores for 5 years, but I have no loyalty to them. On the JB Hi-Fi website, the title of the item says, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4, parentheses, code in a box, close parentheses. You don't have to dig into the description to see it, not that EB Games listed it there anyway. It's clearly listed in the title of the item. And one final thing for this PSA. The game appears to not even come with a red Switch 2 case. It's just a clear Switch 1 case with the Switch 2 banner at the top. If you want this game portable, buy the Switch 1 version, as that will at least be on cartridge. I don't know if the Switch 2 version has any specific enhancements, but this is the worst physical release for Switch 2 so far. Now with that out of the way, let's move on to the regular Switch 2 news this week. Super Mario Strikers has been announced to be coming to the Nintendo Online GameCube library on July 3rd. This is the first additional GameCube game to come to the service since the Switch 2 released. Side note, the game was released as Mario Smash Football in Australia and Europe. A way worse title. In Japan, the Switch 2 has already outsold the lifetime sales of the Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, and even the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition. There are rumours that third-party games besides Cyberpunk haven't been selling very well, even though the console has sold at least 3.5 million units. Definitely more by now. This makes sense to me, as most games attached to console sales of first-party games like Mario Kart World and Zelda. Cyberpunk is going to be the next most popular game, as it was consistently shown off as the benchmark for graphics on the new console, and the whole game is on the cartridge. It's actually been on backorder in Australia for weeks now. If someone is buying a brand new console, and they're already picking up Mario Kart and Cyberpunk, they're gonna be less likely to pick up other third-party games that have already been on other systems for 1 to 2 years. I really want to pick up Yakuza 0, but I already spent close to $1,000 Australian dollars on my console and 3 games. Not everyone has the money to buy multiple games with their new console. It's also worth noting that these third-party attach rates are still better than the Switch 1 attach rates. Yoshi P has hinted at Final Fantasy XVI getting a Switch 2 release. After talking about the new Xbox port of Final Fantasy XVI, they said, and I quote, "Just Nintendo-san left," end quote. I think it's safe to say, he ain't talking about the Switch 1. A large ad for Metroid Prime 4 at the Oxford Circus tube station popped up this week in the London Underground. Why is this newsworthy? Well, the release date for Metroid Prime 4 was listed as out now, which sent the internet into a bit of a tizzy for a few days. A whole bunch of people thought this meant a shadow drop was imminent, but an amendment was made to the ad a few days later with a standard 2025 date plastered in place of the out now date. But come on guys, I feel like it's pretty obvious this is going to be a September release. Due to the software update I talked about in last week's news, 12 games from Limited Run Games that run off the Carbon engine are now working on the system. The games that now work are Clock Tower Rewind, Jurassic Park Classic Games Collection, Toomba Special Edition, River City Girl Zero, A Boy and His Blob Collection, Rocket Knight Adventures, Shantae, Bill and Ted's Excellent Retro Collection, Extreme Sports, Trip World DX, Felix the Cat, and Rendering Ranger R2 Rewind. These games were previously incompatible with the Switch 2, but some of Nintendo's tinkering has now made these fully playable. According to a South Korean website called The Elec, Lies of P publisher NeoWiz is rewarding Lies of P developers at NeoWiz and Round 8 Studio with Switch 2 consoles due to Lies of P hitting 3 million cumulative sales. They're also getting bonuses of just over 7k and an extra 2 weeks paid vacation. Now that's a good boss. Nintendo has reduced the file size of Donkey Kong Bonanza from the previously announced 10GB down to 8.5GB. This doesn't really affect me as I'll be picking the game up physically, but I'm happy for you digital Switch 2 gamers out there. Every gigabyte counts with the limited storage size on the console and the ever-climbing storage requirements of third-party offerings. Nintendo has revealed the release date for Dragon Drive. This is that wheelchair basketball game they showed off back in April as their mouse mode showcase game. It's coming out on the 14th of August with a price of $20 and $30 dues for Australians. It looks interesting, but I'm still on the fence. Mario Kart World got a new update that a lot of people seem to hate. So, in Mario Kart World's Knockout Tour mode, a 3-lap map is generally 2 laps of running starts just to get to the final lap, which is the actual map. One way people got around this was by picking random instead of a map. By picking random, players would be transported to a map without any running starts, and get to play 3 whole laps off the one map instead of having 2 laps of travelling and 1 lap off the actual map. But the new update for Mario Kart World means that now these travelling running start laps can be included in the random map selections. I don't have much input as I don't play online, but I feel like some people are blowing this a bit out of proportion. IGN gave the Nintendo Switch 2 a 7 out of 10 in their review. They also gave the original Switch a 7 out of 10, but they gave the streaming device, the PlayStation Portal, an 8 out of 10. I'm annoyed, but I ain't gonna talk anymore about it. In the Nintendo podcast from last week, Wood Hawker, aka Beat'em-Ups, revealed that an anonymous source of his leaked that the following will be announced during a July Nintendo Direct: Metaphori Fantatio, Pokemon Colosseum for the GameCube, Death Stranding Director's Cut S, Witcher 3 Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, a Metroid Prime 4 release date, and finally, an Animal Crossing teaser. I don't know about you guys, but Metaphori Fantatio and Death Stranding are gonna be easy cops for me. There's a rumor that Masahiro Sakurai used making Kirby Air Riders as a negotiation tactic in return for directing the next Smash Bros. Game. But we all just assumed that was the case this whole time, right? Or at least I did. MIG Switch cartridges are confirmed to be causing Nintendo to soft brick consumer Switch 2 consoles. Basically what this means is that any Switch 2 caught using a MIG Switch will have its online functionality switched off. Now, in a story that surprises pretty much no one person who bought a Switch 2 from Walmart bought what ended up being a returned Switch 2 that was soft bricked due to a MIG switch being used in the console and then returned back to the store. I figured this would happen with secondhand consoles in a few months from now on Facebook Marketplace, but not from a big box store just over 2 weeks after the console launched. And that's it for this week's episode of Switch 2 News. I hope I told you something you hadn't heard before watching this video, and I hope you all have a great week ahead. Have a good one.